in the law, because what's wrong with everything everybody's doing here today? But we are in a situation, of course, where it is very relevant to our lives. So like Aviva told you, my name's Catherine Bernard. I'm a lawyer here in Georgia. I've been practicing criminal defense for 10 years, and as a public defender, I started seeing a lot of drug cases. Now in private practice, I ended up with a lot of them as well, and one of the reasons you may have seen some of my stories is we've had a lot of success around the state. When individuals are charged with growing cannabis or possessing or using cannabis, you know, what's wrong with that? If they're not hurting anybody, why is it something that needs to be the state's business? And even though prosecutors and judges and politicians can be a little reluctant to accept this, I find that the people of Georgia, all over really, are really ready to kind of put a lot of this behind us and say, you know, we've got better things to do with our public safety resources than harass folks who are peacefully growing or using a plant. So it's kind of from that common sense background that I've developed a lot of the legal ideas that I use. And sadly and happily, we haven't had a lot of trials to report on lately, because every single cannabis case I've had since last summer, when I had a man who was growing marijuana and was found not guilty down in Lawrence County, the prosecutors have dismissed every single one of my cannabis cases. So
yeah,
it's good news. We're really happy about that. Obviously, you know, the fewer people who are having to deal with the state, the better. But we know there's tons of these cannabis cases happening all over Georgia. There's still so much work to be done. And so what I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about today is kind of the current state of the law in Georgia, because the last legislative session with HB 213, which is the Georgia Hemp Farming Act, and then HB 324, which is the Low THC Oil Act. I'll first be honest with you, I don't think there's a lot to get excited about in them. I think, you know, it's good that they're making a gesture, it's good that we're making an effort, but there is so far to go. So it's really quite the balance of, you know, we want to encourage our legislators, we want to encourage them to, yep, y'all are headed in the right direction, but unfortunately there's a lot about 213 and 324 that really, you know, they are not nearly far enough. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what is included in those two bills. So HB 213 is the Georgia Hemp Farming Act, and it was passed after quite a bit of pressure. You know, the Farm Bill, the U.S. Farm Bill at the federal level back in 2014 started authorizing states to do experimental programs relating to industrial hemp. So Georgia, whose, you know, number one business is agriculture, finally has started to get on board with that in 2019 in a very limited fashion. So again, not trying to be a wet blanket here, but just being very realistic, I think it's unfortunate that in order to get a permit to grow industrial hemp, that is a product that has lower than 0.3% of Delta-9 THC in it, you have to go through an extensive permitting process, which you can be denied for any reason. There's a $100,000 application fee. There's $25,000 a year for the first year in fees, and then $10,000 a year every year after that. You have to put up a $100,000 surety bond, and most concerning, I think, is that you have to give up your Fourth Amendment rights. So you not only have to provide the GPS coordinates of your farm and where you're producing the industrial hemp, but you also have to authorize the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, or any other law enforcement to come onto your property at any time so that they can check and conduct license compliance and really do whatever they want. And if they locate any product at any point that tests at greater than 0.33 THC, they immediately destroy it. And if it tests anywhere between 0.3 and 0.33, they'll retest it for you, but it's going to get destroyed if it is, you know, anywhere over that very low limit. So, and I'll kind of seg into HB 324, which is the low THC oil bill that provides for limited cultivation of cannabis in state at several of our universities, well, 2 of our universities. And it also has those same very restrictive provisions about your Fourth Amendment waivers. Anybody who participates in this program is expressly giving up their right to to be free of unreasonable searches and seizures. And in fact, for the low THC oil producers, what's really concerning to me is that in order to get a license to cultivate cannabis for the purpose of making low THC oil, you have to provide a 24/7 video feed of your entire facility that is accessible to Georgia law enforcement at any point without a warrant. So, this is why I want to be positive. I want us to celebrate all the great advances we have made, here in Georgia and elsewhere. I think public opinion's really moving in the right direction. But I do want to emphasize that the bills that came out of the legislature, unfortunately, don't really reflect the step forward that they ought to. There's very strict penalties, even if you compare our penalties to those in other states that have done experimental programs like Kentucky or Pennsylvania, they have, very small fines if there's any kind of license compliance issue. Georgia is issuing, 4-figure, 5-figure fines and making it very easy for people to be shut down. So unfortunately, I think the conclusion that we can come to with the Hemp Farming Act as well as the Low THC Oil Act is we've made a difference. We've created the impetus for change, but unfortunately the politicians are still holding on to way too much power over a plant that grows in the ground. So what I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about today is what you, as perhaps a processor or a would-be processor or a cultivator or anyone else along the chain, is what we can do now. Because I do want to, as I said, the people of Georgia are really far ahead of the politicians on this issue. And not just in Metro Atlanta. People think, oh, well, Metro Atlanta is so enlightened, and then the rest of the state doesn't get it. But the rest of the state, is used to agriculture, is used to the idea of people being able to grow what they want to grow. So I think that's why we've seen these successes in front of juries in very rural conservative counties where people might not expect to see these results. And I will note, I know we all want to, we don't want to play the race card or anything like that, but my clients who were acquitted in Lawrence County were both black men, so this is a situation where you've got, a jury full of, it was actually majority white men on the jury, although it was diverse, but, they were happy to let these men go because they knew that they weren't causing any threat to public safety. So I think at the point where anybody starts to feel like, oh, this is too big of a task, how are we ever going to convince people in Georgia to do the right thing? I'm here to tell you it can be done. It has been done, and it will continue to be done if we can just keep sticking with the common sense truth of we're growing plants in the ground that make people feel better. What's wrong with that? Why on earth would we need to spend our public safety resources interfering with that? And so what I want to encourage people to do is get involved at the local level on this. Talk to your local sheriff. Talk to your local district attorney. These are both elected positions. They're up every 4 years, so there'll be a lot of different people running in 2020. So talk to them. Let them know how you feel, how other people in the community feel about cannabis enforcement. Let them know what you're going to expect. Same with your state legislators. You can be polite and respectful, but also say, look, y'all have not solved all the burglaries and murders and rapes that are going on. What on earth makes you think you can take one dime of my tax money and go kick in somebody's door for cannabis? It doesn't make sense. And so these are conversations that, we're having with these local elected officials, with law enforcement officers, with other people in the community, and it's making a difference. So I wanted to encourage you all to continue having those conversations. We are operating from a place of righteousness and truth, and that is really, really shining through. I will say, I even quoted Genesis 1:11 in one of my closing arguments about, and God gave us, every grass on the earth, everything bearing seed. So, it's really, this is something that it's not a left issue or a right issue or a radical issue. We are the common sense moderate position. Let people grow a plant and use it how they choose as long as they're not hurting anyone else. So we are making a difference. And I would encourage you, if you are involved in this chain in any way, pay attention to, people who are going to get their permits. They've got to play by those rules. But I would also point out that, the Georgia Constitution specifically says that in all criminal cases, the jury is the judges of the law and the facts. So that specifically authorizes Georgia juries to be the ones to decide how laws are enforced. And so keep that in mind, that, you know, it might not be the politicians that we have to impress. It might have to be your neighbors, your friends in town, the people who live next door to your farm. If they're on your side, if the people in your community are on your side, that's when you have the power to stand up for what's right. So I just wanted to encourage everybody to, you know, stick with what you're doing. It's so great to see so many, you know, wonderful smiling faces here, you know, with wonderful products that are available that make people feel better. And so thank you for all that you're doing. And if, you know, for God forbid, somebody should come knocking at your door, grab one of my cards and give me a call about it, because there is no reason that anybody should be taking a plea on a cannabis case in Georgia. So, I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any now, or, you know, right after this. So, yes.
Where your card is at?
I've got them right here in my bag, so I'll make them. But yes, I'm Catherine Bernard, and actually I will say I've also just started up a firm with a friend who does civil rights law, you know, if he sues the government over civil rights violations. So you can give us a call on either of those things. And, you know, it's lawyers, unfortunately, are causing a lot of the problems, but then you need another lawyer to deal with the problems that those lawyers cause. Yes.
How does it affect you when the cases are getting dismissed? How does it affect your bottom line?
Oh, my bottom line. That's, you know, I will say I'm very lucky. I have a husband who, you know, is very helpful in subsidizing sort of my public defender adventures. So, you know, I work with people, you know, I have some folks who are able to pay more than others, but I do try to make sure that, you know, nobody is lacking representation because of, you know, because of a financial circumstance in their life. But you're right, it is a challenge because, and I will say it's not just financially, but one gentleman who was growing cannabis in White County, you know, his case was dismissed with the jury waiting right outside, and it has affected him personally.